The waiter approached with another glass of wine Zainab hadn't ordered. "Compliments of the gentleman," he said, nodding toward Marcus, who raised his glass with that familiar smirk, the one that once made her heart race but now made her stomach turn. "I don't want it," she said quietly, her fingers tightening around her purse beneath the table. "Come on, baby." Marcus leaned forward, his cologne overwhelming the delicate aroma of the restaurant's signature seafood. "One drink for old time's sake. Your mother went through all this trouble to arrange our little reunion?" Zainab's eyes flicked to the golden watch on his wrist, a gift from another woman while they were still together. She remembered finding the receipt, remembered his excuses, and remembered forgiving him. 3 times. "This isn't a reunion, Marcus," she said, her Nigerian accent becoming slightly more pronounced as her anger rose. "This is my mother's misguided attempt at fixing something that can't be fixed." A few tables away, a man looked up from his meal, his dark eyes lingering on their table for just a moment before returning to his conversation with 2 business associates. Marcus laughed too loudly. "Always so dramatic. That's why I kept coming back to you, you know? You've got fire." He took a long sip of his bourbon. "Even if you are a bit difficult." She knew what was coming next. The public humiliation, the game he played so well. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit the like button now and subscribe to the channel for more captivating content like this. Now, let's get back to Zainab's uncomfortable dinner. "Difficult?" Zainab repeated, her voice steady despite the anger blooming in her chest. "You know what I mean." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "All that independence talk, your career obsession. Most men don't want that kind of challenge from a woman, especially one who—" He paused, eyes deliberately scanning her body. "Who should be more focused on starting a family by now?" Zainab felt every eye in the upscale Savannah restaurant on them. This was exactly why she had refused her mother's suggestion for weeks. Mrs. Adeyemi had been relentless. "Just dinner, Zainab, for closure, for the family's peace." Closure was the last thing Marcus wanted, and they both knew it. "I'm leaving," she said, reaching for her purse. "Your mother said you'd run away." Marcus's voice rose, ensuring other diners could hear. "She told me you'd never been able to handle tough conversations. That's why you'll always need someone to look after you." Zainab froze, years of cultural conditioning warring with her sense of self-worth. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "A woman without a husband has no protection in this world." "I don't need protection, Marcus. I certainly don't need yours." Zainab stood, dignity intact, but hands trembling slightly. Marcus reached across the table, grabbing her wrist with surprising force. "Sit down," he hissed. "Everyone is watching." That's when it happened. A shadow fell across their table. The Korean businessman Zainab had noticed earlier now stood beside them, his presence commanding instant attention. He wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that screamed old money, but something in his eyes spoke of experiences beyond boardrooms. "You're touching my fiancé," he said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable edge. The restaurant fell silent. Marcus's grip slackened. "What?" The stranger gently placed his suit jacket around Zainab's shoulders, a gesture both protective and possessive. "I said, you're touching my fiancé." Zainab was too shocked to speak. The stranger's eyes met hers for just a fraction of a second, long enough for her to read the message. "Play along." Marcus released her wrist, confusion replacing his earlier confidence. "She doesn't have a fiancé?" The man finished for him, his accent subtle but distinctive. "I understand we haven't made a public announcement yet, but that doesn't give you the right to manhandle her." Something in the stranger's demeanor made Marcus visibly uncomfortable. He stood, nearly knocking over his chair. "Zainab, who is this guy?" The man extended his hand, not to Marcos but to Zainab. "Ready to go, Jaggy?" Without thinking, she placed her hand in his. "Yes," she said, finding her voice again. "I'm ready." As they walked away, she heard Marcus calling after her, but for the first time, his words held no power. The stranger guided her through the restaurant with a gentle hand at the small of her back, nodding politely to the maitre d' as they passed. Outside in the cool Savannah night, Zainab stepped away from him, shrugging off his jacket despite the chill. "I appreciate the rescue, but who are you?" she demanded. The man offered a slight bow. "Kang Ji-hoon." "And it wasn't a rescue as much as an intervention." "An intervention I didn't ask for," Zainab said, though her anger wasn't directed at him. "True," Ji-hoon admitted, But sometimes the help we need isn't the help we ask for. Zainab studied him in the soft glow of the restaurant's exterior lights. Up close, she could see the subtle signs of power. Not just money, but real influence. The way he stood, confident but alert. The faint scar near his temple. The way his eyes constantly assessed their surroundings. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "That man." Ji-hoon gestured toward the restaurant. "He has connections to people who escalate conflict. I've seen his type before. My intervention was the safest option for everyone involved." Connections? Marcus is a finance manager at a mid-level bank. The only connections he has are golf buddies who laugh at his jokes. Ji-hoon's expression didn't change. "Not all connections are visible on the surface, Ms. Adeyemi. Zainab Adeyemi." "Ms. Adeyemi," he continued, "I'm in town for a shipping merger. My company is acquiring a port facility here in Savannah." He reached into his pocket and produced a business card, offering it to her with both hands. A distinctly Korean gesture of respect. The card was simple but elegant. "Kang Ji-hoon, Chairman, Kang Maritime Group." "I'm not offering romance," Ji-hoon said, his directness surprising her. "Just help if you need it. My number is on the card." Zainab looked from the card to his face. "Do you always insert yourself into strangers' personal dramas, Mr. Kang?" For the first time, a hint of a smile touched his lips. "Only when they're seated at the next table during an important business dinner." A sleek black Maybach pulled up to the curb. Ji-hoon nodded toward it. "My driver can take you home, if you'd like." Zainab shook her head. "I have my own car, thank you." "Of course you do," he said, and something in his tone suggested approval rather than disappointment. "Then I'll say goodnight, Ms. Adeyemi." As he turned to leave, Zainab called after him. "Mr. Kang?" He looked back. "Thank you," she said simply. Ji-hoon gave another slight bow before disappearing into his car, leaving Zainab alone with his business card and a strange feeling that her life had just shifted in some fundamental way. The drive back to her mother's house felt longer than usual. Zainab replayed the evening's events in her mind, anger and confusion battling for dominance. By the time she pulled into the driveway of the modest colonial where she'd grown up, she had steeled herself for the confrontation to come. Mrs. Funk Adeyemi was waiting in the living room, a cup of tea cooling in front of her. Her traditional Nigerian head wrap framed a face lined with the worries of an immigrant who had sacrificed everything for her children. "You're back early," her mother observed, her tone carefully neutral. "The dinner didn't go as you planned," Zainab said, hanging her purse on the hook by the door. Habit from childhood. "Marcus called," her mother said, setting down her teacup with deliberate precision. "He told me everything. Did he tell you he grabbed me? Did he tell you he humiliated me in public? Or did he just tell you about the man who intervened?" Mrs. Kao, Adeyemi's eyes flashed. "He told me you embarrassed our family by leaving with a strange man. What were you thinking, Zainab? Do you know what people will say?" "People?" Zainab laughed without humor. "What people, Mama? Your church friends? The Nigerian community? Marcus? All of them." Her mother stood, her small frame vibrating with emotion. "You think your fancy job protects you from what people say? From what a woman needs in this world?" "And what's that, Mama? A cheating man who treats me like property?" Her mother's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "Security, Zainab. A husband provides security. Marcus has a good job, a good family. He made mistakes, yes, but who doesn't? A smart woman forgives." Zainab felt something inside her finally snap, the last thread of obligation that had kept her bowing to her mother's wishes. "No, Mama. A smart woman knows her worth." She took a deep breath, finding strength in the certainty of her next words. "I will not marry fear and call it security. I will not return to Marcus. Not for you, not for our family name, not for anyone." Her mother stared at her as if seeing a stranger. "Then who will protect you when you're older, when I'm gone?" Zainab crossed the room and took her mother's hands. "I will protect myself, Mama. Just like you did when you came to this country alone with 2 children after Papa died. You didn't need a man then. You were strong enough." Something shifted in her mother's expression. Recognition, perhaps, of her own strength reflected in her daughter. The moment passed quickly, replaced by resignation. "You always were the stubborn one," Mrs. Adeyemi said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. Later that night, as Zainab prepared to drive back to her apartment in Atlanta, she found Ji-hoon's business card in her purse. She ran her thumb over the embossed lettering, remembering the calm authority in his voice when he'd claimed her as his fiancée. On impulse, she tucked the card into her wallet instead of throwing it away. Some instinct told her she hadn't seen the last of Kang Ji-hoon. Back at work the following Monday, Zainab immersed herself in the comfort of numbers and regulations. As a senior compliance analyst for Global Transit Solutions, she found satisfaction in bringing order to chaos, in ensuring that rules were followed and irregularities flagged. It was during a routine audit that she first noticed the discrepancy. A series of shipments from East Asia were being processed through unusual channels. Documentation incomplete, but somehow still approved. Digging deeper, she found a pattern of similar irregularities stretching back months. When she brought her findings to her direct supervisor, Richard Okafor, she expected concern. Instead, she met with uncomfortable silence. "It's probably just clerical errors," Richard said, not meeting her eyes. "Leave it, Zainab. Some rocks are better left unturned." "But the pattern suggests—" "I said leave it," Richard snapped, then softened his tone. "Look, you're good at your job, too good sometimes, but there are bigger considerations at play here." "Bigger than compliance with international shipping regulations?" Zainab pressed. Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Bigger than your career or mine. Just trust me on this one." The warning was clear, but Zainab had never been one to look the other way. That evening, she compiled her findings into a detailed report, then hesitated over the send button. Richard's warning echoed in her mind, along with her mother's constant refrain about security. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Adeyemi, I hope this message finds you well. Kang Ji-hoon." Zainab stared at her phone in disbelief. How had he gotten her number? Another text followed. "I apologize for the intrusion. Your number was on the restaurant reservation. I wanted to check that there were no further issues after our encounter." Zainab hesitated, then replied, "No further issues. Thank you again for your intervention." She expected that to be the end of it, but her phone buzzed again almost immediately. "I'm in Atlanta for meetings tomorrow. Perhaps we could meet for coffee. I have information that might interest you regarding your workplace." Zainab felt a chill run down her spine. How could he possibly know about her work concerns? She typed carefully, "What kind of information?" His response was equally measured. "The kind that explains why your supervisor wants you to ignore certain irregularities." Loving this story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. Leave a comment below telling us what you think will happen next. Now, back to Zainab's unexpected message. The coffee shop Ji-hoon suggested was neither too public nor too private. A calculated choice, Zainab realized as she spotted him at a corner table, his back to the wall, eyes tracking the door until she entered. He stood when he saw her, bowing slightly before gesturing to the seat across from him. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice as measured as it had been at the restaurant. "You claim to have information about my job," Zainab replied, skipping the pleasantries. "That's the only reason I'm here." Ji-hoon nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Direct. I appreciate that quality." A server approached, and Ji-hoon ordered in perfect English, his accent barely detectable. When they were alone again, he leaned forward slightly. "Your company, Global Transit Solutions, handles logistics for a variety of international clients," he began. "That's public knowledge." "What isn't public knowledge is that several of those clients use your company's services to move goods of questionable legality." Zainab's back stiffened. "Are you suggesting my company is involved in smuggling?" "I'm suggesting that certain channels within your company have been compromised," Ji-hoon corrected. "Not the entire operation." "And how would you know this?" Zainab challenged. Ji-hoon's expression remained impassive. "Because my company has been tracking these irregularities for months. We've lost shipments to these same compromised channels." Their coffee arrived, providing a momentary break in the tension. Zainab used the interruption to study him more carefully. There was something about Kang Ji-hoon that didn't quite add up. A shipping magnate who noticed details like a security operative, who intervened in strangers' arguments with calculated precision. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally asked. "Because you've noticed the same irregularities," he replied simply, "and because you're the type of person who won't look the other way." "You don't know me." "I know enough." Ji-hoon took a sip of his coffee. "I know you value your integrity over your comfort. I know you stand your ground even when it would be easier to yield." "These are surface observations." Sometimes the surface tells us everything we need to know about the depths. Zainab felt unsettled by his assessment, accurate as it was. What do you want from me, Mr. Kang? I want to connect you with people who can help you address these irregularities without endangering your position. And why would you do that? Ji-hoon set his cup down carefully. Because it serves my interests to have these channels investigated by legitimate authorities rather than alternative methods. Something in his tone made Zainab pause. Are you implying? I'm not implying anything, Ms. Adiemi. I'm offering you resources. What you do with them is entirely your choice. He slid a business card across the table. Not his own, but one bearing the name and contact information for someone at the International Trade Compliance Board. This person owes me a favor, Ji-hoon explained. They'll take your concerns seriously. Zainab didn't touch the card. And what do you get out of this arrangement? For the first time, Ji-hoon smiled fully, a transformation that momentarily caught Zainab off guard. It softened the hard lines of his face, revealed a different man beneath the businessman exterior. I get the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the right thing and the practical thing can be the same thing. He checked his watch. I have another meeting. The card is yours to take or leave. As he stood to go, Zainab found herself speaking before she could reconsider. Why did you really help me that night at the restaurant? Ji-hoon paused, his expression unreadable. Because I recognize something in you that I value in myself. And what's that? The refusal to be defined by other people's expectations. With that, he left, leaving Zainab with more questions than answers and a business card that represented both opportunity and risk. She took the card. 3 days later, after careful consideration, Zainab submitted her report to the contact Ji-hoon had provided. The response was swift and serious. An investigation was launched, conducted with surprising discretion. Her supervisor, Richard, was placed on administrative leave pending further inquiry. Zainab expected backlash, but instead received a call from the company's global director of compliance, commending her diligence and requesting a meeting. What she didn't expect was to find Kang Ji-hoon in the conference room when she arrived. Mr. Kang has been instrumental in helping us identify the extent of the problem, the director explained. Zainab kept her expression neutral, though her mind raced with questions. Ji-hoon merely nodded at her, professional and distant. The meeting revealed the scope of the corruption, a network of employees across multiple companies facilitating the movement of contraband through legitimate shipping channels. Richard had been merely a small cog in a much larger machine. Afterward, as Zainab gathered her notes, Ji-hoon approached her. You took a significant risk, he observed. It was the right thing to do. Yes, it was. His approval shouldn't have mattered to her, but somehow it did. They're going to offer you a promotion, oversight of international compliance operations. Zainab looked up sharply. How could you possibly know that? Instead of answering, Ji-hoon asked, Will you accept it? Of course. It's an opportunity I've worked toward for years. It will mean relocating to the Asia-Pacific office, Busan specifically. Busan, the Korean port city where Kang Maritime Group was headquartered. The coincidence seemed too perfect. Did you arrange this? She asked, her voice low but intense. I merely pointed out your qualifications, Ji-hoon replied. The decision was entirely theirs. Zainab wasn't sure she believed him. Why are you taking such an interest in my career, Mr. Kang? Ji-hoon was silent for a moment, seemingly weighing his next words carefully. I believe in supporting talent, he finally said, especially when that talent aligns with my interests. And what are your interests exactly? His eyes met hers directly. Much more complex than I initially led you to believe. The admission hung between them, an invitation to ask more or to walk away. Zainab chose the former. I think we need to have another conversation, Mr. Kang, one with complete honesty this time. Complete honesty? Ji-hoon echoed, a shadow crossing his features. That would be unprecedented for me. Nevertheless, Zainab insisted. Very well, tonight. My hotel has a private dining room. She should have said no. Every instinct for self-preservation told her to keep her distance from this man, who operated in shadows and half-truths. Yet she found herself nodding. Text me the details. That evening, Zainab chose her outfit with unusual care, a tailored navy dress that projected confidence without ostentation. As her car pulled up to the five-star hotel where Ji-hoon was staying, She reminded herself that this was a business conversation, nothing more. The private dining room was intimate, but not romantic, with a view of Atlanta's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ji-hoon was waiting, dressed in a simple black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Thank you for coming," he said, pulling out her chair. After they had ordered, Ji-hoon folded his hands on the table. "You wanted honesty. Ask what you wish to know?" Zainab didn't hesitate. "Who are you, really, Kang Ji-hoon?" "Officially, I'm the chairman of Kang Maritime Group, a legitimate shipping and logistics corporation with operations throughout Asia and expanding into North America." "And unofficially?" Ji-hoon's expression remained unchanged, but something shifted in his eyes. "Unofficially, I am the head of an organization that operates outside the boundaries of conventional law." The bluntness of his admission stunned her. "You're admitting to being a criminal?" "I'm admitting to inheriting a legacy I didn't choose," he corrected. "My father built an empire that straddles both worlds. When he died, the choice was simple. Take control or watch chaos destroy everything, including the legitimate businesses that employ thousands." Zainab stared at him, trying to reconcile this revelation with the man who had helped her at the restaurant, who had connected her with authorities to fight corruption. "So you're what? A reluctant crime lord?" The question came out more incredulous than she'd intended. Ji-hoon actually smiled slightly. "An apt description, if somewhat dramatic." "Why tell me this? You're putting yourself at risk." "Am I?" His gaze was steady. "You're a woman of integrity, yes, but you also understand nuance. The world isn't divided neatly into heroes and villains." Their food arrived, providing a welcome interruption. Zainab used the moment to gather her thoughts. "The shipping irregularities," she finally said. "Your competitors?" Ji-hoon nodded. "Rivals attempting to establish territory in North America. They lack certain principles I insist upon." "Principles? In organized crime?" "Even in shadows, there can be lines that shouldn't be crossed." Zainab set down her fork. "Why are you telling me all this? What do you want from me?" Ji-hoon's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Initially, nothing but the satisfaction of helping someone who reminded me of myself at a younger age, determined, principled, unwilling to compromise. And now I find myself in the unexpected position of caring what you think of me." The admission seemed to surprise him, as much as it did her. Zainab felt an unwelcome flutter in her chest. "You should know," Ji-hoon continued, his voice lower, "that being close to me means danger. I manage it as best I can, but it exists nonetheless. Is that a warning or a confession?" "Both." His eyes held hers. "I will never trap you, Zainab. Not in expectations. Not in obligations. Not in half-truths. If you walk away now, our paths need never cross again." The use of her first name didn't escape her notice, nor did the fact that he was offering her a clear exit, something Marcus had never done. "I haven't decided about the promotion yet," she said, changing the subject. "Moving to Korea is a significant life change." "It would be," Ji-hoon agreed, allowing the pivot. "Busan is beautiful, but very different from Atlanta." "Would our paths cross there?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider it. "Only if you wished it." The remainder of dinner passed in less dangerous conversation. Ji-hoon describing Busan's coastal beauty, Zainab sharing stories of growing up Nigerian in Georgia. By the time they finished, something had shifted between them. Not romance exactly, but understanding. At her car, Ji-hoon bowed slightly. "Whatever you decide about the promotion, I wish you success, Zainab Adeyemi." "Thank you for your honesty, Ji-hoon," she replied, using his first name deliberately. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. It was liberating. As she drove home, Zainab tried to make sense of her feelings. She was attracted to him, certainly, but it was more than physical. There was something compelling about his combination of power and restraint, about his willingness to show her who he really was while giving her the freedom to walk away. 2 weeks later, Zainab accepted the promotion. 3 days after that, she was packing for Busan. Her mother's reaction had been predictable. First dismay at the distance, then pride in her daughter's success, then practical concerns about safety. "Korea is so far, Zainab. Who will look after you there?" "I'll look after myself, Mama, just like I always have." What Zainab didn't tell her mother was that she had exchanged regular messages with Ji-hoon since their dinner. Nothing romantic. Information about Busan, recommendations for neighborhoods, insights into Korean business culture. Practical things that nonetheless created a bridge between them. Her first month in Korea passed in a whirlwind of new experiences. Her position came with significant responsibility and a beautiful apartment overlooking Busan's harbor. She threw herself into learning the language, understanding the culture, establishing herself as a competent leader. Ji-hoon kept his distance professionally, though they met occasionally for coffee or dinner, always in public places, always with the unspoken understanding that their connection remained undefined, until the night Marcus showed up at her door. "Surprise," he said, his familiar smirk now tinged with something harder. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" Zainab stood frozen in her doorway. "How did you find me?" "Your mother was very helpful. She's worried about you, all alone in a foreign country." Of course. Her mother would have seen it as a kindness, connecting her with someone familiar in a strange place. "You need to leave, Marcus." He stepped closer. "After I came all this way? That's not very hospitable, Zainab." "I mean it, Marcus. We have nothing to discuss." His expression darkened. "Actually, we do. Like how you're sleeping with a Korean gangster." Zainab felt her blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," Marcus hissed. "Kang Ji-hoon. I did some digging after he humiliated me at that restaurant. Found some very interesting rumors about his family business. Whatever you think you know. I know enough to make things very uncomfortable for both of you," Marcus interrupted, "unless you decide to be more accommodating." The threat was clear. Zainab's mind raced, calculating options, consequences. "You have 30 seconds to leave before I call security," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Marcus laughed. "Go ahead. I'll be sure to share what I know with them. I wonder how your fancy new job would survive that kind of scandal." Before Zainab could respond, a voice spoke from the hallway behind Marcus. "I believe the lady asked you to leave." Marcus whirled around to find Ji-hoon standing there, two men in suits flanking him. The transformation in Ji-hoon was remarkable. Gone was the restrained businessman, replaced by something colder, more dangerous. Marcus stepped back. "This is a private conversation." "Not anymore," Ji-hoon replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. "My men will escort you to your hotel. You'll find your belongings packed and your flight rebooked for tomorrow morning." "You can't." "I already have." Ji-hoon stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Consider this a courtesy, Mr. Hale. The next time you threaten Ms. Adeyemi, courtesy will not be extended." Something in Ji-hoon's eyes must have conveyed the seriousness of his warning, because Marcus went pale, then allowed himself to be led away by the two suits without further protest. When they were gone, Ji-hoon turned to Zainab. "I apologize for the intrusion. My security team noticed him at your building and alerted me." "You have people watching my building?" Zainab asked, unsure whether to be grateful or disturbed. "I have people watching for potential threats," Ji-hoon corrected gently. "Your ex-boyfriend began making inquiries about me shortly after our encounter at the restaurant. It raised concerns." Zainab leaned against her doorframe, suddenly exhausted. "Will he be back?" "No." The certainty in Ji-hoon's voice left no room for doubt. "Did you—" She couldn't finish the question. Ji-hoon understood anyway. No violence was necessary. Some men respond adequately to the mere suggestion of consequences. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by a surge of other emotions: gratitude, attraction, confusion. "Would you like to come in?" she asked impulsively. Ji-hoon hesitated, then nodded. "If you're sure." Her apartment was small but elegant, with a balcony overlooking the twinkling lights of Busan Harbor. Ji-hoon moved through the space with careful respect, accepting the tea she offered with a slight bow. "Thank you," Zainab said when they were seated on her small sofa, "for handling Marcus." "You would have handled him yourself," Ji-hoon replied with surprising confidence, "but I'm glad I could spare you the effort." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea and watching the harbor lights. Eventually, Ji-hoon spoke again. "I've kept my distance these past weeks. I wanted to give you space to establish yourself here, to make your own decisions without complications." "I've appreciated that," Zainab acknowledged, "but I've missed our conversations." Ji-hoon's eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Understanding, possibility. "I find myself thinking of you often," he admitted quietly. "More than is wise, perhaps." Zainab set down her tea. "Why isn't it wise?" "You know why." His gaze was steady. "My world is dangerous. The people who oppose me would not hesitate to use anyone I care about as leverage. Is that why you've never married? Never had a family? Ji-hoon nodded slowly. My father married for love. My mother was killed by his enemies when I was 9. He never recovered from the loss. The revelation explained so much about him. His caution, his restraint, his solitude. I'm sorry, Zainab said softly. It was a long time ago. Ji-hoon's face revealed nothing, but his hands tightened almost imperceptibly around his teacup. But it taught me to be careful with attachments. And yet here you are? Here I am, he agreed, a hint of wonder in his voice. Perhaps I'm not as wise as I thought. Zainab found herself moving closer to him on the sofa. Or perhaps wisdom isn't always about avoiding risk, but about choosing which risks are worth taking. Ji-hoon's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with deliberate care. A philosophical perspective. I contain multitudes, Zainab said with a small smile. Indeed you do, Ji-hoon murmured, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Which is why I find myself unable to stay away, despite my better judgment. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Then, with gentle deliberation, Ji-hoon leaned forward and kissed her, a question more than a demand. Zainab answered by drawing him closer. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Comment below with your favorite moment so far. Now, let's see what happens next in this captivating tale. 6 months later, Zainab had settled fully into her life in Busan. Her work continued to challenge and fulfill her. Her Korean had improved dramatically, and her relationship with Ji-hoon had developed into something neither of them had anticipated. A partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and deepening affection. They maintained certain boundaries. Ji-hoon never discussed the details of his organization's less legitimate activities, and Zainab never asked. She met his business associates, but not his criminal lieutenants. They appeared in public together at cultural events and charity functions, but Ji-hoon was careful to keep her separate from anything that might place her at risk. It was an imperfect arrangement, but it worked, until the night Ji-hoon arrived at her apartment with a troubled expression and a security detail that was larger than usual. What's wrong? Zainab asked as soon as he stepped through her door. Ji-hoon dismissed his men with a gesture, waiting until they were alone before he spoke. There's been a development. A rival organization has been making moves against my interests here in Busan. Is that unusual? The timing is. Ji-hoon ran a hand through his usually immaculate hair. They waited until now, when I have a vulnerability they didn't previously have access to. Zainab understood immediately. Me? I'm the vulnerability. Ji-hoon's expression softened as he crossed to her, taking her hands in his. You are many things to me, Zainab Adeyemi. A vulnerability, yes, but also a strength. A reason to be more cautious, but also more determined. What does this mean, practically speaking? Zainab asked, her analytical mind already working through implications. It means increased security for you. It means being more careful about where we're seen together. It means... Ji-hoon hesitated, his grip on her hands tightening slightly. It means you should consider whether this life, this relationship, is what you really want. Zainab pulled back, studying his face. Are you giving me an out? I'm giving you a choice, Ji-hoon corrected gently. The same choice I promised you that first night at the restaurant. Freedom to walk away with no recriminations. Something fierce ignited in Zainab's chest. Not anger exactly, but determination. I've never walked away from anything worthwhile because it was difficult, she said, lifting her chin. I'm not starting now. Relief flickered in Ji-hoon's eyes, quickly masked by continued concern. The risk is real, Zainab. I need you to understand that. I understand risk. I also understand choice. She stepped closer, placing a hand against his cheek. I choose this. I choose you. Ji-hoon turned his face to press a kiss against her palm. Then we face this together. The next few weeks brought changes. A driver who took Zainab to and from work, security personnel who maintained a discreet presence near her apartment, new protocols for communication with Ji-hoon. She adapted quickly, her natural pragmatism allowing her to incorporate these precautions without surrendering her independence. What she hadn't anticipated was how the threat would affect Ji-hoon. He became more protective, more reserved, more consumed by the responsibilities of his position. Their time together grew shorter, more precious, and sometimes strained by unspoken worries. One night, as they shared a rare quiet dinner at his penthouse overlooking the sea, Zainab finally addressed it. "You're pulling away," she said simply, setting down her chopsticks. Ji-hoon looked up, surprise briefly crossing his features. "I'm trying to protect you." "By distancing yourself? That's not protection, Ji-hoon. It's preemptive abandonment." He was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting to the darkened windows where the lights of ships moved slowly across the harbor. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "My mother died because my father loved her too much to let her go, even when he knew the danger was growing. He couldn't imagine his life without her, so he kept her close. His selfishness cost her life." Understanding dawned. "You're afraid you're repeating his mistake." "I know I am." Ji-hoon's eyes found hers again, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "Every day I choose to keep you in my life is a day I prioritize my happiness over your safety." Zainab stood, moving around the table to kneel beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. "Ji-hoon, listen to me. Your father made his choices, your mother made hers. I'm making mine, with full knowledge of the risks involved." "Knowledge isn't the same as understanding," Ji-hoon argued gently. "You can't truly understand this world until you've seen its darkest corners." "Then show me," Zainab challenged. "Stop sheltering me from the reality of your life. Let me see it all, so my choice can be fully informed." Alarm flashed in Ji-hoon's eyes. "No, absolutely not." "Why? Because you think I'll run away, or because you think I'll stay regardless?" Ji-hoon stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "Because once you cross certain lines, you can never go back. I've accepted that fate for myself, but I won't be responsible for pulling you across those lines." Zainab followed him, her reflection joining his in the darkened glass. "You're not pulling me anywhere. I'm walking beside you, eyes open." He turned to her, his expression torn between longing and resolve. "You deserve a normal life, Zainab. A safe life." "I deserve to make my own choices," she countered. "Just as you deserve to be loved for who you are, not despite it." Something broke in Ji-hoon's carefully maintained composure. He pulled her to him, his embrace fierce and desperate. Zainab held him just as tightly, feeling the tremors that ran through his body, the physical manifestation of fears he rarely voiced. "I can't lose you," he whispered against her hair. "Then don't push me away," she answered simply. Later that night, as they lay tangled in his sheets, Ji-hoon traced patterns on her bare shoulder with gentle fingers. "Come with me tomorrow," he said quietly. Zainab propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face in the dim light. "Where?" "To see the other side of my life. Not everything. There are some shadows too dark to share, but enough for you to truly understand what you're choosing." It was a concession, she knew, a gift born of trust and fear and love, though neither had spoken that word yet. "Thank you," she said, sealing the agreement with a kiss. The next day, Ji-hoon showed her glimpses of his other world, not the violence or the illegal operations, but the people whose loyalty he commanded, the community he protected, the complex web of relationships that comprised his organization. She met elderly shopkeepers who bowed deeply to Ji-hoon, saw the orphanage his family had funded for generations, witnessed the respect he commanded not through fear, but through reciprocal obligation and honor. By evening, when he brought her to a small temple overlooking the sea, Zainab had a clearer understanding of the man she had chosen. Not just a reluctant crime lord, but a leader bearing the weight of tradition and responsibility with grace and principle. As they stood at the temple's edge, watching the sun sink into the horizon, Ji-hoon reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a simple platinum ring set with a single perfect diamond. "My father gave it to her when they decided to build a life together, knowing all the complications that would entail." Zainab's heart thundered in her chest as Ji-hoon continued, "I'm not offering you fantasy promises of a perfect life, Zainab. My world has dangers. My family legacy has costs. But I promise you this, my loyalty, my honesty, my protection. I will never cage you. I will never lie to you. I will honor your strength even as I shelter you from storms." He took the ring from its box, but didn't move to place it on her finger. Instead, he held it between them, an offer rather than a claim. "Will you build a life with me, knowing everything it means?" Zainab looked from the ring to the man holding it. This complex, honorable, dangerous man, who had never once tried to make her smaller to accommodate his own power, who had offered her choice at every juncture, who had shown her both his strength and his vulnerability. "Yes," she said, extending her hand. "On one condition." Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "I keep my career, my independence, my voice in decisions that affect us both." A slow smile spread across Ji-hoon's face. "I would expect nothing less from the woman I love." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Zainab knew they were creating something rare. A partnership where power was shared rather than imposed, where safety included truth, where love didn't erase either of them, but made them both more completely themselves. 2 years later, Zainab stood on the balcony of their home, overlooking Busan Harbor, watching a cargo ship bearing the Kang Maritime Group logo glide into port. Behind her, inside, Ji-hoon was on a call. Something about a shipment from Singapore, details she deliberately didn't inquire about. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. "When are you two coming to visit? The elders are asking again about a proper Nigerian wedding ceremony." Zainab smiled, typing back, "Next month, as planned, and tell the elders Ji-hoon is learning all the traditions." Her life had settled into a rhythm that somehow accommodated both normalcy and exception. She continued her work at Global Transit Solutions, now as Director of Asia-Pacific Compliance. Ji-hoon continued to balance his dual worlds with precision and principle. They traveled between continents, maintaining connections to both their cultures. There were still moments of danger, still boundaries she didn't cross, still days when the weight of Ji-hoon's responsibilities created distance between them. But there was also profound trust, mutual respect, and a love that had proven itself sturdy enough to weather both ordinary disagreements and extraordinary challenges. As Ji-hoon joined her on the balcony, slipping his arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple, Zainab reflected on the strange path that had led her here. From that uncomfortable dinner with Marcus to this life she had chosen with open eyes. "What are you thinking?" Ji-hoon murmured against her hair. Zainab leaned back into his embrace, watching the sun glint off her wedding ring. "I'm thinking about choices, about how sometimes the safest path isn't the right one." "A philosophical mood today," Ji-hoon observed, his voice warm with affection. Zainab turned in his arms to face him. "I was remembering something my mother used to say about marriage, that a woman needs a husband for protection." Ji-hoon's eyes, always observant, studied her face. "And what do you think now?" "I think true safety isn't found in dependency. It's found in partnership, in shared power, in truth." His smile, still rare but more frequent these days, transformed his face. "As usual, your wisdom exceeds mine." Zainab laughed softly. Not wisdom, just experience. She stretched up to kiss him, a gesture that still carried wonder after all this time. "Thank you for never trying to make me less to make yourself more." Ji-hoon's arms tightened around her. "I fell in love with your strength, Zainab. Diminishing it would be like dimming the stars to make the moon brighter." As they stood together, watching ships come and go in the harbor below, Zainab thought about all the women throughout history who had been taught to make themselves smaller, safer, more palatable, and about the quiet revolution of choosing a love that demanded neither submission nor sacrifice, but partnership. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't always easy, but it was true. And in a world of comfortable lies and convenient compromises, truth was the greatest luxury of all. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your favorite part. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next captivating tale. Thanks for watching.